Hello, America. The United States of America is at war with Muslims. There, I said it. And yes, I meant it. Why do people refuse to call them by name? Like our former enemies, we called them by name. The Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, the Russians, Muslims. That's right, Muslims. In fact, the first people who formally, publicly declared war on America were Muslims, forcing Thomas Jefferson to send our Marines to the shores of Tripoli, that is honored in the Marine hymn. We called them Muslims then, when they were the first enemies to declare war against America, Christians and Jews, and nothing has changed with Muslims since. Their Quran contains 104 verses commanding Muslims to kill Christians and Jews if we refuse to submit to their system and dump our God. That offends me, and it better start offending the Christians and Jews in America who can't even call their name as our enemies. Who is our enemy? Who is our military fighting in 106 countries since 9/11? We avoided the truth by declaring it a war on terror. Well, who exactly is Mr. Terror? How can they shoot and kill a terror, or bomb a Sharia law, or determine in a nanosecond who's a moderate, radical, or extremist? Can you see a woman covered head to toe just to prove she's a Muslim? Can you determine if she's a radical, extremist, a Sharia law follower, or a moderate Muslim just by her dress? She's a Muslim. You may have just seconds to determine what kind of Muslim she is before she blows you and your loved one by your side into eternity. So choose well. Walmart shopping is no longer secure. Yet mosques of our enemies are allowed to be built across America with our full knowledge that they are pentagons for our enemies and offensive to our God.
Meet Louie E. Johnston, Jr. He's a minister, author, historian, and media producer. Tell us what is happening in your favorite area that you live in, Nashville.
Nashville is a microcosm of what's going on globally with the Muslim government system. You want to talk about freedom of religion, but we don't talk about freedom of our Constitution. And the Muslims are a government system with a religious component. Their government system already has their own constitution, the Quran, and they have their own ways, and they're committed to destroying Western civilization in America and replacing our government and our system and forcing submission where we won't have any freedom of religion, but we all must submit. The term Islam means submission, and we must all submit to their false god and their false religion. And they've been at war with us since Muhammad invented this religion.
Do you remember, I'm sure you do, the controversy in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, when they wanted to build a mosque?
Well, that actually, I was involved in that, and I actually took this is the writ of certiorari. Most people don't ever see one, but I took it all the way to the Supreme Court because our government was advocating.
Could they get a copy if they go to your website?
Sure.
Okay, just remember these little ideas.
I filed a federal lawsuit, but before that, in that trial, the problem with that trial is that it was a zoning and codes issue. And the Muslims, imams and the Muslims who wanted to build that mosque didn't want to follow the rules that were set forth as far as zoning and codes. So they were suing, several of the neighbors are suing to force them to comply with the local zoning and codes. So in that lawsuit, I met the great Lori Cardoza Moore from Proclaiming Justice to the Nations.
Good friend.
And we sat on those hard Rutherford County Chancery Court benches and in that trial. And from there birthed a great friendship that we've had ever since, continuing to fight for our God.
Yes.
And our God Jehovah. But
since you're right there, is there a difference in the Muslim God and our God?
Absolutely. And if someone would just look at their symbol, the crescent moon and star, that represents the moon god Allah. You see, in Muhammad's days, the Zoroastrian religion was prominent, where the moon god and the sun god were the main gods, and the stars represented their children. They were husband and wife, and their offspring was the stars. Well, Muhammad just threw out the sun god and claimed the moon god of Arabia to be Allah, and then his star, picked a star and a crescent moon. That's what you see on all the mosques. That's their symbol. They don't have a symbol of Christ. They don't use the Bible. They have their own wannabe Bible,
copied from
the Bible, actually from the Torah and from the Jews,
yes,
and our Christian Bible. Yeah. It's just
what used to just infuriate me when I saw the last President Bush say over and over again, we're serving the same God, and suggesting that we give the Muslims a break because their God is our God. And I would scream at the TV set and say, no, they're not.
That's exactly right. And it's a shame because President Bush did some good things, but he's the one that listened to the bureaucrats that have been in Washington, D.C., and his advisors and counselors, and he listened to them.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that filled his head with that nonsense.
Continue about Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro, the U.S. attorney, district attorney in Nashville, where I live, filed an amicus curiae brief and alleging that it was an RLUIPA violation, that they had to tried to force a chancery judge to allow them to open that mosque and stop the proceeding. They had to do it because they were going to sue and they'd be right, and that the U.S. attorney would not defend it if the Muslims were to sue. Well, I read that amicus curiae brief, and it was the biggest pack of lies I'd ever seen. So I wrote my own amicus brief based on my book that I had written, The Christian Nation Revolution,
yes,
Regeneration. And we just talked about that in a previous program. But I submitted my brief, and I had just went through a similar experience in federal court when a city zoning group did not want me to open a church in their city. And I had property there, and they didn't want me to open it because they had enough churches, and this was a tax-producing revenue strip of properties, and they were going to deny me occupancy of my own property.
In America?
In America, right here in Millersville, Tennessee, the city of Millersville, which is right outside of Nashville.
So now you're faced with the Muslim,
yes,
getting the okay.
Well, it was that lawsuit. I went to the city of Millersville and I begged them not to do this because I'm going to sue for my rights, and I'm going to make sure that my church can open up in this building that we have possessed. So they said, well, go ahead. Said, we think we could beat you in court. Well, it was a federal court decision, and we won it, and they had to pay the attorney's fees and all that. So I had experience with RLUIPA. And when I recognized what they were claiming, I knew that was wrong. So I filed my own amicus curiae brief with the Chancery Court judge. He not only accepted it, but he ruled in our favor because of that brief, that there was no threat of violation of federal law, as the U.S. attorney had claimed. So with that, I went and filed a lawsuit against the district attorneys, U.S. attorneys, and Eric Holder and President Obama, who were advocating on behalf of Muslims against Christians. Yeah. I took that to that was lost at the district court in Nashville, and I took it to the U.S. Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, the Sixth Circuit. I lost that there, and then I appealed it all the way to the Supreme Court, and they declined to hear it, which they do 97% of all cases. They do not hear. They only take 3% of the cases submitted to them at the Supreme Court. That's one reason that the proliferation of the Muslim mosques throughout the nation has exploded from 1929 when they opened the first one to over 2,000 today across America.
And opening
unimpeded. More. That's exactly right. My problem, Herman, is
what happened to the final conclusion?
Well, the final conclusion was that the Muslim imam, went to Nashville when he thought they were going to lose the case. He went to Nashville, and in one day, the same day, he got the U.S. attorney and a federal judge to hear his plea that they forced Murfreesboro to open, the government to open that mosque. and they ruled in their favor. In one day, he went up and got a favorable ruling that overrode and said, you've got to let them occupy the property. So that in itself is illegal. You don't intervene in an existing trial in a state level with a federal.
And they get a tax deduction?
Oh, absolutely. It's all tax deductible, as I say in my video documentary here. The Muslims are laughing at us because they're raising money for terrorists, and it's tax deductible.
Yeah. This video, I love DVDs. This will open your eyes so wide, and you will ask yourself, can this be true? Things are happening today that you really do. As much as I read, as much as I see, DVDs that are sent to me, information that is unbelievable. Even to this day, I will look at things like this and go, can that be true? The answer is yes, yes, yes. Get your copy. I'm telling you, there's the website. I wish I could take the time during this and show you excerpts throughout the DVD, but I don't have the time. You get your copy, you can sit there at your leisure and even rewind it and go back and say, did I hear, oh my goodness, he did say that. It's amazing that information like this does not rest in the hands of our congressmen, our senators, people that are in political power. If they would just take enough time, and they can be skeptical if they want to be, but just let them check out what they're skeptical about. Check it out. And then all of a sudden they're going to come back and say, I don't believe it, that is true. It's interesting what the media can do. I heard them just say, one guy that wrote a book about a person that is running for president right now, happens to be female. And it's a in-depth book on who that person is, financially, how you came from $200,000 when you entered politics to $200 million now you're worth, and it's all documented. A guy that was said, well, that book has been discredited. This is a guy that, of course, obviously is for the person. Another person checked out and says, the book has never been discredited. So on national TV, you can make a statement like that, totally wrong. It's actually a lie. And the majority of the people out there will not check out what you just said, because if they see that book in Walmart, they'll go, oh, that's been discredited. Isn't that interesting? So back to the fact that they now are operational in Murfreesboro?
Yes, and we lost that battle because the battle was taken out of our hands, and the appeals fell on deaf ears because the Justice Department is, of course, controlled. Now, let me say this. I mentioned earlier that only 3% of the cases that are appealed to the Supreme Court ever get heard. That means that all these liberal justices in the courts of appeals, that's why it's so important. A presidential election is so important. Yeah. And your congressmen, your senators, is so vitally important that we keep people out of those seats in the justices that are ruling, because guess what? 97% of the rulings in America aren't made by the Supreme Court. They're made at that appellate court level, and they will stand.
Can you imagine if our founding fathers ever imagined that the Supreme Court would have more power than our elected officials? Think about that. And it's becoming true. And if we have the next, they say as high as 5 Supreme Court justices could be put in, and they're there for life. And if they go the direction that the majority of the Supreme Court is now, what will America look like?
I'm going to make two comments. First of all, while they're appointed for life, they can be removed from office, just like any federal official. If we had only one courageous member of the House of Representatives to file impeachment charges and have a trial to remove them from office.
Well, he could file it, but nobody's going to agree with it because
exactly.
they're politically correct.
But nobody will do their sworn duty to file those charges. It's not really their responsibility what happens from then. But by and large, you're absolutely right in saying that our nation is being trashed by the Supreme Court, and we are at 4-4 right now.
Yeah.
We cannot even count the number of 5-4 decisions we had when Scalia was on the bench that preserved what we have left of our culture and God and country. But if we lose this presidential election and appoint 3 more liberal justices, our nation's lost for 100 years, minimum, with these rulings.
The American Muslims are trained, this is what you say, by imams to jihad.
Yes, it's one of the seven purposes of all Muslims. They must wage jihad.
You know, you can't do this because I know the freedom of religion in America. But if you could bug every mosque, how many of them are in America now?
Over 2,000, but you don't have to bug them. I've got the video of what's going on right there.
Yeah,
and in both these DVDs. It's right, it's their words.
But nobody's going to buy it.
That's correct.
That's it. And I'm not sure they would buy it literally if they heard them say it in the mosques in the 2000, and it was all, you know, put together and say, here's what everyone said. I'm not sure that who we have in office today would even agree. And I think probably the majority of them say, well, you heard that, but I didn't hear, I don't think they said what you think they said. So you know, it's almost like denominations.
Yes.
You know, read the Bible.
Yes.
And everyone has their own interpretation of what was just read. Where are we going?
Well, if we don't take action.
Meaning?
Well, if we don't inform ourselves as American citizens, but more as Christians, we're supposed to study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that needs not be ashamed. If we can't even take the time to watch what's going on inside the Muslim mosque right here in Nashville, Tennessee, in my hometown, but down in Florida, I've got a video on this documentary of raising funding to fund terrorists to wage jihad against America, and they raised $12 million in 2002 alone, and right here in Florida.
Well, you're saying that at Vanderbilt University, the Muslim
imams are teaching at Vanderbilt University and at Tennessee State University.
And you have on this video.
It's there. It's them talking, not me.
Their words.
Their words from their, I mean, it's actually secretly taped a video from inside the Muslim mosque and at Vanderbilt and at Tennessee State University.
You say the imams preach all Muslims must obey the Quran, no voice, no choice. And I know it's preached that, yes, but you're talking about the radicals. And so that's all we have to worry about. If we could just corral all of the radicals, we would be okay. But you're not saying that.
Let me define further what you're saying, and you're right onto something. You're hitting the nail on the head. How many Christians actually know what's in the Holy Bible? They're cultural Christians. Yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
The same goes for Muslims who don't read the Quran. And they don't go pray 5 times a day. Or maybe they do, but they don't go attend mosque or whatever and get the training. So there are cultural Muslims, just like there are cultural Christians. Here's the problem. As Christians, at some point in time, we're going to be faced with the decision, who is God and what is he to me? We're going to make that decision because we're going to stand before him, and it's going to hit us at some point when we mature to the point where God calls on us and we make that decision. Muslims face the same thing. It's in our DNA to worship God. It's in our DNA to worship him and to seek God. So Muslims that are misguided to believe in the false religion that Muhammad created, they're really
heart-seeking God, and God does judge the heart. And he says, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So Muslims that are cultural, we're not talking about them right now, but they will wake up at any time and read the Quran and read that hate-filled speech that says they're supposed to murder everybody that doesn't believe in their Allah and their false god,
and we're great
moon
Satan.
God of Arabia.
And we're the great Satan.
That's right. And this is what they're taught. Yeah. In fact, it's just amazing to me, Herman, that we're importing tens of thousands of Muslims from foreign countries, giving them $20,000 first-class plane tickets to get over here, and they have been raised from birth to hate America and to kill all Christians and Jews and to destroy America if they can.
You suggest speak truth in love to Muslims.
Absolutely. How are we going to win the world to Christ if we can't even talk to Muslims? I'm amazed at the churches, denominations, and they'll go to Utah and they'll witness to Mormons because Mormons are a passive people, and they'll minister to anybody else trying to evangelize them, but they won't go where the Muslims are.
I think the fear is they think that they know the Quran and they could not refute what they say. I think it's a fear.
Oh, I definitely think it's a fear. I think it's a fear that they will cut our heads off.
Yeah.
See, Christians love and embrace and forgive our enemies. Muslims cut the heads off of their enemies. There's a drastic difference in the approach from Christians and Muslims.
This is your words. We cannot avoid or appease Muslims and please God Jehovah, who cannot lie.
Exactly. What would happen if Elijah took that stand that our pastors are taking today and our Christian churches are taking today? Oh, well, let's just live together and worship whatever God wants. Let's let them build that mosque right next to our Baptist church or Methodist church or Presbyterian church. That's no problem. Let them believe what they want to believe because we have separation of church and state. That's not standing for God Jehovah. His number one commandment is, thou shalt have what? No other gods before me.
Wow. Let me just, you're going to see a little clip before we leave. But you need this. I don't know how else to get truth to you. You've obviously had a burning passion to get this truth out.
Yes.
And I know what time it takes, to do programming and do video and to do research and all of the things you have to do and make sure you've got the spelling correct and the right names and the credits and all of this. It's work you cannot believe. He has done this for you. You could not compile this probably in 10 years with all of the research that is done. This is your opportunity to be informed. We are such an uninformed country.
Yes.
We've gone to sleep. And in Chicago, hundreds of people a night are being shot.
That's right.
They go to sleep hearing gunfire. Is that what it will take for us to say, wow, this is getting serious?
Yes.
Don't let that happen. It happened in Hollywood when Christians actually used to look at the movies and say, okay, they're not trashing God, so it's okay with us. Until pressure was put on the Christians, and instead of standing for what they knew they should stand for, they acquiesced and said, okay, if you feel that way, we'll leave Hollywood without any opinion.
That's right.
And so they did. And so we look at movies and we go, they're making jerks out of Christians. They're propping up the liberals and say they're the most intellectual, smartest people, and Christians are a bunch of dummies. That's because Hollywood has that opinion and they can make the movies.
Yes.
Because we left Hollywood and have had no say. We removed our say. Let's wake up, America. Jesus Christ is the answer.
Yes.
To Muslims, I pray Muslims will see Christ high and lifted up.
Yes.
Because he died on that cross, shed his blood on Calvary, went to the grave, rose the third day for them as well as you and me.
Amen. Amen.
He is your answer. Take a look at this and get your copy.
The memo was the official strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood to create civilization jihad, to destroy the Western civilization from within using our laws and traditions. Founded in 1928 in Egypt, the creed of the Muslim Brotherhood remains the same today. God is our objective. The Quran is our constitution. The Prophet is our leader. Jihad is our way. And death for the sake of God is the highest of our aspirations. Muhammad Akram understood that the Muslim Brotherhood alone could not succeed with the civilization jihad. The Ikhwan will not be able to carry out this mission alone. As for the role of the Ikhwan, it is the initiative, pioneering, leadership, raising the banner, and pushing people in that direction. They are then to work to employ, direct and unify Muslims' efforts and powers for this process. In order to do that, we must possess a mastery of the art of coalitions, the art of absorption, and the principles of cooperation. Akram then concluded his explanatory memorandum by listing 29 organizations as, quote, a list of our organizations and the organizations of our friends. Imagine if they all march according to one plan, unquote. Their goal is to destroy our nation, to replace our Constitution with absolute Sharia Islamic law, to establish a caliphate, an Islamic totalitarian global government. Although the work of the Holy Land Foundation was stopped, the work of the Muslim Brotherhood continues and increases. There are foremost experts in our country who research and investigate this threat of civilization jihad, of Islamic terrorism. They are individuals and groups who provide evidence to government offices, agencies of law enforcement, and others. They have written articles and books. They provide additional information on the web and through public speaking and other forms of education. Although their work reveals alarming truth, we must be inspired by their courage, and we must ourselves become involved. For more information,
thank you for watching It's Time. If you have recently made a decision for Christ, Herman and Sharron would like to hear from you.